Hello everybody and welcome to Essential Skills for New Practice Managers. This was recorded in the year 2025-2026, but it will be relevant in future years. You may have to change one or two details depending on contract changes, but most of the parts are completely relevant. So to talk you through today, first of all, who am I? Well, you may have attended some of my training sessions over the years. My name is Luann Stewart. I've been a practice manager for several areas over the years, going from very deprived areas to the very leafy, very beautiful areas. So I have a big understanding of what's going on in all types of practices. I've been a trainer and mentor for the Lancashire and South Cumbria Training Hub, the LMC in Lancashire, and a trainer and mentor for those of you like yourself from Manchester, practice managers under the GP Excellence Programme. I'm also a private consultant in estates, that being GP estates, working on those kind of things like extensions and refurbs of estates, project managing for the practices. So quite busy. Despite the fact that I have recently taken some retirement time away, and I'm slowly retiring. So today what we're going to do is we're going to split this session, and it's split into 6 different areas. And the idea behind it is not that you sit and work through all 6 areas all in one hit. In fact, we definitely don't advise that, because if you are doing that, you are probably not going to take everything in. It's going to be very challenging to do it that way. So as we go through each section, I will stop, pause at the end of that section, and that would be a good time to either pause and come back to the next section on a different day, or indeed just take a break, take a little walk round, maybe get yourself a drink, clear your head before the next section. It's up to you how you work, but we certainly wouldn't advise you just sit through the whole few hours of this, because it will be too much all at once. So the areas we're going to talk about are going to be suitable for either new practice managers, people who are planning to be practice managers, so that might be an operations manager or an assistant manager or even a reception manager looking to step up over the next few years. But also be suitable for returners to work, so someone that maybe has been off on maternity leave or a long leave and just wants a little bit of a reminder of the stuff that's probably deep in here, but sometimes you just forget because you've had other things on your mind and you've been away from it for a while. So we're going to talk you through juggling workload, HR, some of the more unusual HR issues, finance, health and safety, safeguarding, and then resilience. And we end with resilience because we feel that resilience is really important for you to keep in your mind, because it is a really challenging time in general practice. There's a lot of burnout as the workload gets up and up, so therefore we want to find ways to help you cope. There are also lots of separate videos made by GP Excellence, and they're available on their website that take you through in more depth for each of these areas. There's several on different parts of HR, different parts of health and safety, business continuity, making yourself a business plan, all sorts of things. So this isn't a one-stop shop. We do suggest that you work through this video and then perhaps take a little bit more time on the separate videos to really get that in-depth learning on each area. So hopefully this should help you. So we're going to start with section 1. And section 1 is juggling workload, something that we all have to do just to keep on top of absolutely everything that we are dealing with at the moment. So hopefully, to make you have a slight smile, it will get better. As you learn and as you work through, and as this becomes almost second nature, although the problems will still pile up and still be the same, you learn to deal with them a lot quicker and easier because you are so used to that constant turning cog of all the different workloads that come through general practice. But I would suggest you take every opportunity, as you're doing today, for training or any mentoring chances that you may have, because it's far easier to be resilient when you understand more and you get a little bit of help from other people. It's not braver and not better to always do everything on your own. The nuances with general practice is that they are completely different than anywhere else you may work, because we are everything in general practice. We have to know about the finance, the HR, complaints, upset staff, how to deal with all these different things, as well as new contracts bombarding us at all times. So it is something that you need to work with others, learn from others, and take that learning from more experienced practice managers out there. The biggest problem I hear from practices is emails. Emails are becoming more and more. And for some people, just seeing that loaded inbox full of emails can actually make you feel quite exhausted. There's lots of little tricks that you can do. The easiest thing to start doing is right-clicking and junking regularly emails you don't need to receive. So that would be things like locum companies telling you they've got a fabulous nurse available in Blackpool, but you're in Manchester. You don't need to know this. And if you do need a locum, you can easily look up those locum companies and contact them. You can be bombarded with these emails, and sometimes if you've got lots of nonsense emails, it can be difficult to sort out the correct emails you actually need to deal with. So start right-clicking and junking regularly emails you don't need to receive. And after a day off, as the emails are built up and up, or particularly after a holiday, think about opening your emails up on either a phone or an iPad or something where you can get the Outlook app. I've never managed to get it on my laptop, although I'm quite sure those of you that are more technically minded can get that on your laptop too. Will probably just take a little bit of work. And when you do that, it shows focused or other. You can probably see from the example here, focused and other. If you look in the other, you often don't need to open any of these emails. You can literally delete them, 99% of them, just by looking at the heading and the first line or two will give you that. And then you are clearing a load of your emails out of your inbox without too much effort. So to give you a few examples, what appears in others, often training course available. So if you don't need any training courses at the moment for your staff, or you can see by the heading it's not suitable, you can remove those. But the biggest thing for me was if you set up, say, your annual leave on something like TeamNet, doesn't have to be TeamNet, but I'll use that as an example. As you can see, I have TeamNet in my emails at the time in my other. And that would be, for instance, if a receptionist has booked an afternoon off, the reception manager has looked at the rota, they've agreed that afternoon off. It is their job to sort that out. But you as the main person get emailed to tell you that. And sometimes I could open my emails and find 20 requests that had already been dealt with by various leads of teams, but I am being informed. So those can just be deleted because I know that my team leads have handled them. Things like that can clear your inbox quite quickly, and then you can focus on the emails that actually need your attention. I've had other people tell me with emails that they have managed to set up side folders where emails directly flow. If you want to do that, that is going to have to depend on how good you are at making sure you check things. I know for me personally, once it's gone into a folder, it's gone and it's not the most important thing for me to check. So that wouldn't personally work for me, although I do use email folders once I've read the emails. But if that works for you, that's great. I also worked with a practice manager who had set up his emails so that it went for anything he'd been CC'd into, directly flowed into a folder that he only checked once a week, because he felt if he wasn't actually the direct recipient of that email and he was just in it being CC'd in, then he didn't really need to class that as a priority. So anything that works for you to cut back those emails, start doing it today, because otherwise you really will burn out. A really important other way of not burning out is delegation. Build a team so strong they don't know who the leader is. And that means you need to learn to trust the members of your team. Delegate regularly, but ensure you don't micromanage. Sharing that load and building the team is really important. Can start with some quite straightforward things such as appraisals. Do you need to do every appraisal? Should your reception manager, who is someone that spends a lot of time with your receptionists, not actually be appraising your receptionists? Can they be made a little shorter in some cases? There is a shorter form available, and that's going to come out with some of the many documents that are available to you when you've done this course. Each of the documents, I should tell you at this point, are labelled up for which part of the course they're from, and they will come out to you as a whole, and then you can sort through them and use whatever is useful for you. So do think about delegating a little more. And there is a really good saying that leadership is not about being the best, it's about making everyone else better. So what you need to do is think of yourself as the leader of the great ship of general practice. You are there to make sure everyone else is doing what they need to be doing. You don't need to be doing all the work. You need to be overseeing the work. Let's think about a consultant. When you have a consultant, they are not the best at every part of the job that needs doing. But what they are is they are the best at overseeing everything and making sure that everything is done correctly. They don't take the bloods of the patient. The phlebotomist does that because the phlebotomist is the best person for that. The consultant doesn't feel, oh, I've delegated that, therefore I'm not good enough. They actually know that that is sat with the best person. And that's how you need to start running your practice, almost like a practice management consultant that is sitting at the top of the tree, looking down and making sure everything is running correctly, and just doing the most difficult pieces of work yourself while everybody else is taking the pressure off. If you don't delegate, you won't make it through the mountains and mountains of work that are coming through. A really good idea to get your team working a little better and learning what their priorities are is to form a written structure and share it with the team. And that's all the team. There is a copy of this available, but to give you a little bit of a look, this is the one that I completed on the management structure, although I've done the same with my dispensary structure, my administration structure, and even my nurses. If you work out what each area is that you cover, so finance and HR are on show, but there's many more. There'll be health and safety that comes in beneath that, and safeguarding, all sorts of different things, even attendance of meetings. And you work out who out of you does which pieces of that work. And the reason that we do this is it's good to remind people, because they won't constantly go back and look at their job description, but to have this reminder up so that they can look at it and see, oh yes, that is actually my responsibility. But also, this can be handed to your partners, and you may need to at first remind your partners. So when they come to you, and perhaps the reception manager is there to deal with first level of complaints or problems with reception, but a partner will come to you and say, did you know this happened in reception today? Do you want to sort that out? I always face them back to this piece, this team structure, and say, did you go to the reception manager? Because as you can see, that's sitting in her part of the workload. Eventually they'll get used to going there, and eventually it will work better, because really, if you are taking charge of everything, sometimes that doesn't give your staff members that chance to flourish and grow and show you that they can actually do the job well as well. And any of you that have sat in that reception manager or assistant manager job role will know that sometimes you do need to be given the chance to actually shine and show that you can run things, because your future will probably be to move onwards and upwards. And you can't do that if somebody isn't delegating down to you. And the final part of this section is to talk about organising your workload. Look at your time management. Do you avoid the challenging work? Do you do busy work? We've all had that staff member, let's hope it's not you, that is always the busiest person, but is never on top of anything at all. because they are doing other people's work, doing busy work, wandering around thinking, I love to set up a search. I'll do that for you, when actually they should be perhaps concentrating on accounts or something else. So sometimes really not organising your workload correctly can cause all sorts of mischief. Learn to put a sign on your door for closed door time when you're doing the really complicated pieces of work. That might be your finance, your accounts, something that you really need to concentrate on. That door needs to be closed at times, and stop everyone flowing through your room. Stop some of the silly nonsense calls that get put through to you. That call for you, bang down. One of the first things I've always done with my reception team when I've started is to tell them that they don't need to put through upset patients that are putting a complaint in. They can send me the details so I can feel prepared and calm when I call that patient back. Even if it's only 5 minutes later, I can have at least got the notes up. Telling my reception team not to send through such things as people who can change my gas or electric. I'll contact them if I need them. Locum agencies, again, I can contact them. I don't need that constant stream of calls when I'm settling down to a piece of work. We will send you out some little pieces of organisation structure that can help you work and organise your workload. And hopefully that will start to get you doing the really important stuff, maybe the things that need to get to the ICB for your leses and deses, those things to make you money, rather than dealing with, once again, another nonsense phone call. So think about how you can organise your workload to work better and stronger so that you can be on top of things. And delegation is key to that, as we had mentioned before. That is the end of section 1. So take a break, pop me on pause, or come back another day to do section 2, which is HR. Hello, welcome to HR. So we're going to talk through HR that happens in general practice and how you can work through some of the more challenging things that may happen to you. We all deal with some parts of HR every day. Some of those things involve our team coming to us with vague queries. Sometimes you have to say no to those team members, and that can be really hard. And then sometimes we have to deal with the more difficult things, the grievances, disciplinaries, capability. And we're going to run through how to do all of those things today. We also have several handouts that will come out to you, and each start with HR, and then we'll tell you exactly what part they're for. A lot of them I hope that you can pop in a folder and never use, because you're never going to have a difficult, challenging time in general practice. But what I will say to you is everything that we go through today is something that I have personally been through in my sort of roughly 20 years in general practice. I've gone through all of these things, I've dealt with them, and I've written them up in a way that hopefully will help you to save you a little bit of time, because there wasn't much out there while I dealt with these things. So we're going to start by just telling you a little bit about why, maybe if you're thinking about becoming a manager, why maybe it's not for you, because you're not going to be everyone's friend. You are their boss. And this is a great Steve Jobs quote that really explains this. If you want to make everyone happy, don't be a leader. Sell ice cream. Because actually you'll never make everybody happy. And if you do start to feel you're making everyone happy, often that's because you're making people happy that maybe shouldn't be, people that maybe need to run through some capability or need to have a little bit of a stronger approach. And your good staff won't complain, they'll simply move on. And what you don't want to be left with is a lot of challenging staff. The hardest part about management is the balance between being respected, being in charge, not being their friend. So making sure that you don't take offence if you're not invited to everything. Everyone doesn't always want the boss there. And if they see you fully as the boss, you may not get invited to things. If it's really important to you to be a major part of the team at all times, and then you won't be able to make the difficult decisions. Those decisions, such as disciplinary, is really hard to do when you're really, really close with friends with everybody. So have a think about how that can work for you and if this is really the job for you. And if it is, let's just learn and work through different ways of doing things. So unfortunately, most of you will go through grievances or disciplinaries in your time as a manager. Do ensure that you always follow all rules. And that means following the rules that are often on ACAS. But if you have an HR company, you need to work through their rules and do everything in the way that they want you to do them. Otherwise, you won't be covered in the future. So that's really important. Everything must be kept confidential. You can't stop staff members who are going through a grievance or a disciplinary from telling the whole team what's going on. But what you can do is not be part of that gossip. You need to step away from that and be confidential from your end. Otherwise, you can find yourself in a lot of trouble. As soon as I'm going through either a grievance that I'm dealing with as a manager or a disciplinary that I'm dealing with as a manager, the first thing I do is prepare for an appeal. May sound a bit backward, but actually it means that you keep somebody out of the whole discussion so that they can come to it with fresh eyes. I normally use a partner for that, and perhaps one of the other members of the management or leadership team if you have a practice big enough to have that. I tell them they will be part of the appeal, and therefore I don't want them really understanding the general things that I've decided through going through that disciplinary, because that's not fair. They should come to it with fresh eyes. You have to make sure you do a full investigation. You have to interview people, take notes, get everything written down, and make sure you really have a full understanding of everything. Never, ever make a decision in advance. You have to listen to the facts. In fact, if you go into a disciplinary and at the end of that disciplinary meeting, you actually give your version of what's going to happen, whether that's a verbal warning all the way up to gross misconduct and somebody loses their job. You cannot make that decision in that meeting. You have to leave that meeting, take the facts away and consider everything before coming back with a decision. If you come out with a decision in the meeting, they have really big grounds for appeal because you haven't followed correct procedure. So do ensure that you don't fall foul of that. Even if something to you is very obviously wrong, you must listen to their side and any extenuating circumstances, just as would happen in a court of law. So do follow that advice and do work through those things properly. Capability is another that you will probably run through at some point in your life. There are 2 points in capability. There's often capability of sickness. So if somebody takes an awful lot of time off sick, you can start running through capability of the job. There is also capability of the actual parts of the job. If somebody is continually making mistakes, not able to do the job properly, then you won't run through capability as well. Again, ensure you follow all the rules. And if there is no HR company that you have to follow, then do use the very useful templates that are available through ACAS. Keep everything confidential. Again, they can tell other people they're going through capability, but that's not for you to do. This can take several months. Unlike a disciplinary, there is no real end to it. It can carry on unless you set an end date. Don't make a decision in advance that somebody's going to be pulled away from their job. Give them the opportunity to improve. Always follow up. I've seen so many capabilities where managers have just got fed up and stopped running through it when no improvements have happened. There is paperwork available that we'll send out to you after you've seen this, but make sure that you follow things through. Capability tends to end in 2 ways. Somebody actually tries to improve. Sometimes that's short term. Sometimes it works longer, or they make the decision that actually maybe if it was a step up in job, it's not for them. And maybe if they could return back to their original post. So if someone's perhaps been given a leadership role and it's not for them, they may want to step back. or sometimes they just leave because capability is too much to deal with. If somebody is going through a lot of capability with you, it's probably a blessing if they do decide to leave, because then you can start again afresh with someone who maybe will really enjoy the job and want to deal with it. We're now going to go through some of the more challenging things that you'll go through. Alcohol, often one. Also drugs in the workplace, becoming more drugs than it used to be, and slightly less with the alcohol, but both are a massive problem. Is this happening at work, or is this the after effects? And you'd have to deal with them differently depending if this is a one-off or regular. So for an example, if you've got a great member of staff, they're never off, they always do their job really well, they have a big birthday celebration over the weekend, and then they come in Monday and it's almost coming out their pores because they've drunk so much. I would probably send them home. But that doesn't really need to maybe go further than that. If it's a one-off, you know it's a one-off, and actually they've just tried to come to work to do the right thing, but perhaps they shouldn't have been there. That's very different than this happening very, very regularly. People coming in hungover and not pulling their weight, which is not fair on the rest of the team, or coming in and actually drinking in the workplace. Obviously, in all of those cases, you should be sending that person home. You do have to think about the rest of your team. It's not fair on the team if this is happening to them and they are having to pick up the slack. But consider your patients as well. Has anybody been harmed? And this isn't just clinicians. Okay, with clinicians, you can look through the consultations. Have they missed something? Are they reacting differently or slower? But it can also happen with reception. Sometimes listen back to phone calls. You can see some dreadful things if somebody has been drinking. And it's often good when they're sobered up to play it back to them in a disciplinary, because therefore they'll actually see how they behaved. I've actually dealt with this myself with a reception member of the team who missed a patient talking about their chest pains running down their arm. She was just giggling in the call, clearly intoxicated. And at that point, very concerningly, the patient actually said, "What does it feel like to have a heart attack?" That didn't even trigger in her brain. She just said, "I don't know. I've never had a heart attack," and booked them an appointment a week later. Fortunately, their wife drove them to A&E, and we found out while I dealt with the complaint afterwards. It was a very challenging, very difficult position, but it made me realise that even someone in a reception job can make such massive errors that this could cause loss of a life. So we really need to think very seriously if people are drinking at work. You may consider mental health work, mental health help for them, get some clinical help for them. You do need to suspend and investigate as appropriate, and perhaps get through and do that disciplinary. Often you'll find people decide to move on if that's the case, and they really don't want to stop. Although I have had cases where somebody has got that help, stopped drinking, and actually come back and been an asset to the team. So sometimes you can feel you've done some good as well. Another thing that's becoming a little more prevalent within our jobs is dealing with sexual issues. As you'll know, that in the 25-26 year and 26-27 year, we are having to safeguard further our teams from dealing with any unwanted attention. And that includes attention from third parties. So that can be our patients or our people that pick up the blood samples, for instance, our cleaning teams. Anyone that is causing upset to your staff, you have to have lots of procedures in place. And this is a change in the law for both 26, 27 and going even further in 27, 28. So we need to make sure that we've got all those things in place. And NHS England has got things on their website that will explain to you how to do that. But one thing that we are seeing a lot more of since mobile phones and WhatsApp groups is inappropriate photographs being shared. I've actually dealt with this a few times with complaints from staff. I would always suggest that you check if this has been a consenting relationship that is now over, and if so, I'd really try and avoid that. It's not for us as employers to be involved in somebody's personal life. But if this is an unwarranted photograph that's just been sent to somebody, it's quite serious, and you do need to investigate. Officially, you should suspend while that's going on. You do need to think, is this malicious or has it really happened? You've also got to find out if the photographs were solicited. So what that means is, did somebody ask for a photograph to be sent, only to then complain about that person sending the photograph? Often you can see if there's a text message or things associated, but you have to be very careful. If somebody wants to show you their phone to show it's solicited, that you don't have to see that particular photograph. Particularly if they've admitted sending it, there's no need for you to actually see it. Often good to get a doctor involved, because that is something that they see within their work life, and therefore, particularly if they're of the same sex as the person, it makes things a lot easier, because you don't want to then be accused of looking at those photographs. You need to be very careful, because you can have people of different levels within the workplace. So if this has gone from a senior person to a junior person, position of power can be considered as an issue. And we also need to safeguard our students that are coming in, because they are coming into us as medical students, and we have to protect them as well. So it could even be the same age. You may have a receptionist who is harassing a medical student, and therefore they could be the same age, but there is a position of power because one is a student and one is a staff member. So we have to be on top of all of these things. If there is an actual accusation of harassment or assault, again, you need to get really involved here and start to get proof. That proof could be text messages, WhatsApp messages. It's more important if things have actually gone via NHS mail. Believe it or not, it does happen. And if people start to harass using the NHS system, you've got more grounds to do something than on their private phones. But you also need to consider assault in the workplace. If there has been an assault, do you get the police involved? Well, that's up to the victim. You can send the victim to hospital for tests. You can get CCTV, gather any evidence. If it happened outside work, you need to see if the police were actually involved. And if it is a senior clinical member of the team or a managerial member of the team, you may need to consider if there is a PIPOT involved. So a PIPOT is a person in position of trust. And if the police had been involved at any stage with that, that is a further issue to deal with, which can involve having time to deal with the police, with safeguarding from the NHS, and risk assessment to make sure that person is fit to be in the workplace. So there's a lot that can come out of these things, but you need to make sure you follow everything properly and correctly to protect your team. Also, partnership disputes, something that many of you will go through. It is always good to understand and know your partnership agreement. For a start, is there a green socks clause? What is green socks, some of you ask? Well, actually, and I just find these little facts quite interesting. Many, many years ago, I think it was a law firm, I may be wrong, they had managed to throw somebody out of their firm because they had continually worn green socks, and it irritated everyone. This became known as a green socks clause. And that means that if it is written within your partnership agreement that you can remove someone simply because the other people vote them out, you have to be aware of that. I have seen it triggered in a practice. I have been aware of somebody being removed from their partnership simply because the other partners decided while that person was on holiday. that can be a really, really challenging thing. So you need to have a look. The LMC do not recommend that you have green socks clauses within your partnership agreement, but you really should know. If your partners are in a proper dispute where lawyers are involved, it gets very costly. It drags on for a long time. So if you can avoid the legal challenges and perhaps get some mediation help, definitely worth doing. You have to see if what they're fighting about has got reason to remove them from the partnership. Have they brought the partnership into disrepute by some of their actions, and therefore the other partners will have reason to remove them. But what if they make up? So what I would suggest is do not take sides. However strongly you feel one is right or one is wrong, or however much you maybe prefer one partner to the other, really keep neutral in all of this, because if they make up, you are the non-partner in general, unless you're a managing partner, and therefore things will become very difficult for you. So it is really important to try to keep out of these things as much as you can, which is very difficult when there is a full-blown dispute going on. Hopefully, you won't be in this position. Staying with HR, we are going to talk about payroll and pensions. You do really need to understand your payroll system. There are some very good NHS pension webinars out there that are definitely worth going through and understanding. I have put a guide to pensions for staff in the bundle. And do remember that staff pensions go through NHS pensions, and you'll be dealing with that in a different place than the doctors where you go through PCSE. And they have to be set up very differently, doctors in payroll, as their employer part of their pension comes through on your statement and doesn't come through that same bundle as goes through with the NHS pensions when you're looking at your GMS1 form. So they are set up differently. If you use a payroll provider, they should be aware of this, particularly if they are particularly dealing with NHS pensions. It is quite important that you understand those last final bits and what to do as you work through the pension system. For instance, with your salaried GPs, get a rise during the year. You should be going on PCSE, and you should be adding that rise in as a change of salary to make sure that all your payments go correctly. Things that tend to go wrong with doctors' pensions, because they're the ones that do seem to go wrong more, is when you get a brand new doctor and that doctor has come straight from training to you. For some reason, it does take PCSE a while to fully get all of the details from them, and it won't allow you to add them properly unless you get their SD number, which you can get from lead employer. You can often get them to get it for you, and then you have to message PCSE and explain to them why this is a new starter who won't be added on properly to the pension scheme. And they will come back and forth with you and getting various details, and then they'll manually add it for you. The other time you can often have a problem is if you have a salaried GP that then becomes a partner. For some reason, they don't transition very well across within PCSE, and it's often easier to end them on the system and then the following day restart them as a partner. For some reason, just changing them means that payments get missed and lost, and then they collect it all at once. And that is something to be aware of. Have a look through your statement and make sure that all of your partners and all of your salaried GPs who are in the pension are showing on there, because if not, you can suddenly end up with a lump sum being removed all at once, where they've suddenly discovered they haven't taken payments for someone for some time. It can be really difficult. The other part we're going to consider is our staff files. You should not have a mixture of digital and paper files for your staff. We do recommend really that they should all be digital now. It may take you a bit of time sorting out your digital files, and make sure they are set in digital folders with separate parts for contract, for pension, etc., to make sure it's easy to find things. When you look at those digital files, you will have to maybe spend some time scanning in old files and then getting rid of them with your confidential waste to make sure everything is held digitally. Do yourself a checklist and make sure that every single staff member has, as a minimum, photo ID within their file, their VACNIMS history, DBS and annual updates, confidentiality forms, their contract, references, or if you have staff who have been around for many years, you may find references weren't done quite the same 20 odd years ago. So if that's the case, you may have to do a risk assessment for a lack of references. They should have a signed induction sheet in their files. Obviously, if it's sort of 20 years ago, you may not be able to sort that out now, but certainly going forward, you should have a signed induction sheet. An induction should include health and safety, a look around the building and fire planning, as well as an actual closer induction around their particular job. An unusual one that I've found recently from CQC is they want to see an up-to-date annual thing to show that they are registered, our doctors are registered with the GMC or our nurses with the NMC. Although I've always looked this up, it's new to me to have to do a separate save as PDF every single year, adding that into the file. But it is something that CQC are now looking for. So I would suggest that you get all of that type of clinical registration paperwork and then check it annually, maybe at the time of their appraisal, just to make sure that you've got everything in. Staff DBSs should have an annual update. There is one available with the paperwork that comes out here, because then you are putting the onus back on the staff member to tell you if they have been arrested or in trouble that year. If you have anything that shows up on the DBS, even if it's from several years ago or something minor or something that doesn't affect their job, you must do a risk assessment. For instance, if you've got a reception member of the team who has a new receptionist and you find they've got drink driving showing up on a DBS, but they don't drive to work, you can't just think this doesn't affect them. You do a very simple risk assessment. No driving expected as part of the job. Therefore, you've risk assessed it. But do a proper risk assessment and have that added in. You should have an up-to-date appraisal, and they need to be detailed. If it's a clinical member of the team, there should be a clinician as part of that appraisal. You cannot have your managers on their own appraising nursing teams. CQC will come down on you for that. You should have clinical competency or clinical supervision as part of the appraisal. And you should also do end of probation meetings, and you should have a list of your staff appraisal due dates so that you can show CQC. What we've actually done is, because appraisals is quite a complex part of a role, it sounds simple, but perhaps it isn't as simple as it sounds. We've done a whole extra video on appraisals and how to do the perfect appraisal for each different type of job role. And don't forget your own. There should be managers' appraisals in there, and that should be done by a partner, unless you're an assistant manager, etc., where it can be done by your practice manager. So make sure everything's done correctly, but I would really suggest that you give yourself a note to go in and look at the appraisal video. It's about an hour long, and that comes with its whole host of appraisal paperwork and clinical supervision paperwork that can assist and help you to work through and make sure that you're doing everything correctly within your practice. That is the end of section 2. Take yourself a break and come back for section 3, or do section 3, finance, on a different day. Hello, let's start with section 3, finance. We're going to start by working through a GMS statement. So you can pop me on pause and go and get one of your own statements if that helps, or just work through the statement on the screen. As you'll see, I've added some highlighting to this. that won't be there. I've also added notes to say what things mean, because sometimes it's really challenging to understand what things are when they just come with a little code. So your statement won't look exactly like this, but it's sort of a spoof version of the statement. And it'll start at the top with the full amount of money you've earned for the month. And then it will do minus your out of hours to give you the amount that's going to actually hit your bank account. That will include your calculation of your monthly global sum payment. And if we work down a bit further, as you'll see, I've highlighted the capitation is what decides your monthly global sum payment. Capitation is looked at once a quarter. So this is April, May, June. And that would be looked at on April the 1st. And that's what you'll see in your payments at the end of April, end of May, end of June. Will get looked at again in July for July, August, September. Again on October the 1st for October, November, December. And then the big one on January the 1st for January, February, March. Why is that the big one? Well, that also includes working out your PCM money, which is looked at once a year. Why does this matter? Well, actually, it can make a difference to you. So I'm going to give you a scenario where you have a new nursing home that's opening up. It's December, end of December. You're coming up into that Christmas period. You've got staff off sick because it is a flu period of time as well. You've got lots of staff on annual leave. Perhaps your registration girl's on annual leave. She's coming back in January. And you get this nursing home that comes in. They've got 100 patients, big wad. And because they're a nursing home, they don't do things digitally. They brought it all in paper. And you think, do you know what? If we have to see him, we'll see him as a temporary res and we'll just pop those to one side. Those 100 patients can be dealt with in January the 2nd when my staff member's back. That means you will be losing all the money for those patients for January, for February, and for March, because they weren't on January the 1st when the capitation was run. So sometimes it's really important. You can leave all that extra gump for blood pressure or do they drink alcohol or any other bits that you may have added on, but get that GMS1 form, get that actual registration form on to make sure you are being paid for those patients, particularly in nursing home patients, as in my scenario, because as we come down and it says practice counts of patients in residential care, those patients are paid an extra 43% approximately on your global sum amount. So if they are not registered, you are not getting that money. We are going to go through in future slides how to register them properly and how to do that comparison to make sure you've got that right. Then we have the raw practice list size. That's where if you do a search in EMIS or System 1 or whatever system you're using, that would be the number that will come out of the amount of patients in your practice. And further down, it will say the practice weighted list size. So this is actually the amount that generally you are paid on, the weighting of things, because there is a payment on different types of patients. As we'll show here, you get more money for the very young or the very old compared to those in the middle. You also get a little bit more for females than males. Generally, that's thought because we go through more things, menopause, giving birth, postnatal and prenatal care, even young girls going in with period pains. So women tend to go to the doctors more, and we are paid a little more for them because of that. Then we're going to move down further and start to see all the different things that are actually coded. And that's really important that you understand some of this coding to make sure that you are being paid correctly. So we look down and we see GP Rep G. That's retainer pay. So if you have a GP retainer, then you have to actually put claims in and you'll see the dates of your claim and the money coming through. I mention it because I had a GP retainer in one place and unfortunately the money wasn't coming through because the previous practice manager had not been claiming it. She thought it was automatic. So GP retainer is somebody who was going to leave GP and you have managed to retain them. Often they get extra time to do their appointments and you are paid because of that. And you do have to have a mentor on site. This could be someone who is retiring. They could have been off for a long time on lots of maternity leave, things like that. and then you retain them, so that extra money comes in. Then we look down a bit further and you'll see different claims. So you've got your rates claim and your water claim. So when we look at our water claim, this is coming up slightly differently now in the last 2 months. So at the time when I made this, you would see your water account number and then the date of your bill that you had sent in. Again, you'd had to claim. And that was the way that we'd see things. Suddenly, recently, I have noticed they just come in with a date and no number, which can be a bit confusing if you have a branch surgery, because you can't actually see which bill this was for. But hopefully you've got all those bills that you've done, and we are going to go through reimbursements in a future slide. And you come down a bit further and you'll see 2 different QOF payments. Now, one of these will only be once a year. That's your QOF adjustment. And your QOF adjustment generally comes out at the end of May, has been as late as the end of June at times when there's been things that have gone wrong. But you'll also see your aspiration, which is monthly. So you understand QOF. If you go on CQRS and you do a report, you can see the total amount of QOF that it is possible for your practice to make in a year. So the ICB or whoever organises this will work out that total amount of QOF that is possible. They will divide this up and take 80% of that amount, assuming you've got a 20% leeway that you may or may not make. So they'll take 80%, then they'll divide that 80% by 12, and that is the amount of QOF aspiration money that you receive to help you with cash flow throughout the year, and then to work out your annual payment. When all of the year is finished, they'll work out exactly how many QOF points you made. They will minus the 12 aspiration payments that you've already received, and the lump sum, what you'll be left with, is paid out to you. This can be a minus. If you've done really badly with your QOF, they can take money away. So it's that aspiration is not a given. So do make sure that you work on your QOF throughout the year and make sure that you get that as much as you can in that lump sum. We used to only get 70% divided up as the aspiration. It went to 80% for cash flow reasons. And the reason it's important for you to know that is if you're new to practice management and you get told, oh, the big lump sum used to be bigger than that, have you not done as well? It's actually only possible to be 20% now, whereas it used to be 30%, up to 30% of QOF. So actually you should be aware of what happened in the past so you can answer those questions that may come through from your partners. As we come down a little further, most of these are self-explanatory. You will see all the different payments coming through from CQRS. And that's that you've gone on and claimed for various, generally vaccines that you put through. And then you may have some one-off payments. So for ideas of those, the top one there was a one-off payment, unfortunately not available anymore, but that one was for the accelerator program. Something similar to GPIP, but we used to actually get paid to attend it. The reason I'm telling you is if you put in various claims, you should be able to see them either coming back through this statement or coming back throughout the rest of the month in other payment days, if that's how your ICB pay you. You'll see the learning disability payment, so that's claimed on CQRS. And again, you'll see your DES participation. Everyone should be getting that as being part of the PCM. Come down a bit further and you'll see another one-off payment. This one says CAP gig. That's an estates payment, and that is if you have a capital grant from doing a premises improvement. And I will mention that at the moment there is a lot of money being given to your ICBs for premises improvements. That includes things like flooring, where the skirts go up to make sure you've got correct flooring in. There is also money going in to make sure you are disability approved height of your reception desks, to make sure you've got infection controlled sinks. I would be checking with your estates if there is any work that you are planning to do to make sure that you can utilise that money that's gone in, and it is on a 4-year scheme. So that should take you through to sort of 2030, 31 to be able to go in and claim some of that money and get that work done to improve your premises. So definitely worth having a look at doing that. You'll have to write a PID for that to work through to hopefully get some of that money and work done. Come down a bit further and you'll see your notional rent. So your notional rent, if you have more than one site, there will be more than one payment on there. Then you'll see your CQC fees being reimbursed. That can be annually or monthly. They are reimbursed in whatever way you pay them. So if you pay them monthly, they'll be reimbursed monthly. If you pay them once a year in one big hit, you'll get it back in one big hit. Again, we'll talk about that in reimbursements in a bit. Then you'll see your statutory and your voluntary levies. So that is money that comes out, and that is to cover things like your LMC payment. One thing I have missed off here is you should also see any of your trainee, if you have trainees, not medical students, they come separately. But if you have trainees, ST1s, 2s, 3s, FYs, then they show up on here. And just to add to that, if you see the little £200 payments that come through, that is for your trainees who are not actually at your practice. So that might be that you've got a trainer and your trainer is an educational supervisor for them, and it's each time they write in their portfolio. So they're not ones that are actually working at your practice, which is why you may see some people that you don't know who they are. And their GMC number is the number that comes up to show what somebody is being paid for. So you will see that GMC number that will come up, and then a £200 payment. You'll need to discuss with your partners that are trainers how they are paid on that. And it varies practice to practice. So if they are given extra time to do that work when they should have perhaps been seeing patients, they're given a whole session, then potentially that money goes into the pot. But if in fact, in your particular practice, they have to do that all in their own time, they may be paid that money separately as a prior share. So that's something to consider and make sure that you're doing things correctly. And then as we come down to the bottom of this, you'll see lots of doctors' names. As you can see, mine are spoof names. I certainly haven't worked with Dr. Doolittle or Dr. Spock. These are their pension payments, and you'll see those as minuses, and it will be their employer and employee, even the partners, because they might be the employer, but the employer and employee still comes out on your statement. And you need to make sure, as I mentioned earlier, that all of your doctors that are in the pension scheme are noted on here. So you remember I mentioned nursing home patients, and I think it was here where you can actually check on your particular statement how many nursing home patients it is showing that you have, and if that is correct. So this isn't the same number that the PCN pay you out for, because that is care home beds, not actually, there doesn't have to be a person in those beds that is registered. This is for people who are actually registered at your practice in a care home or a residential home. Basically, any home that has a CQC registration can be classed as a residential care home as far as this payment. If you have got a home with maybe 3 or 4 learning disability patients within it, you need to think within that home, is there a CQC registration? So can that be counted as this? Or is there not a CQC registration, in which case it cannot be? When you register these patients, it's a 43% rise on their global sum, approximately, is how much more they're worth. So for instance, when I joined my last practice, it said practice count of patients in residential care 2. We actually had around 100. So therefore we weren't being paid properly. So it's really important to make sure that happens. So back then, so we're looking back at 2022, so the global sum was made worth a different amount of money, adding approximately 100 patients to to our practice was worth about £10,000 a year. So it's really important that you work on that and you have a full understanding that you've got that correct. There is some sheets coming out on the finance section of this to explain to you and show you in detail how to do this. But basically you have to code within the registration area of EMIS. So that is here where there is a little drop down in the part that says Residential Institute, and make sure that that is done correctly. And it's important that we do that and that we then keep checking that, because one, it can get missed, but also you often get problems when patients are already your patient. They're perhaps housebound, they move into a nursing home, and one of your reception staff helpfully does a change of address but forgets to tick that box. It is really important to double check it. I would suggest monthly, but again, we talked about those quarterly capitation changes that will show the results. So if you do this piece of work, for instance, in December, then on January the 1st, your capitation will be redone and you'll see the difference in your global sum money coming in at the end of January. So it is important you keep doing that and keep checking. So to work through our global sum, because it is really important we understand how to do this. This was done on an older, this was done on 25-26 year. Obviously, you can change the amounts in the sums and update them. This is just showing you how to work things out. So why you'd work out your global sum increases is if you have, you're not in an agenda for change practice, for instance, and your doctors say, how much do you think we can afford to increase our staff's wages? To work that out, you would obviously work out a percentage on their wages, but you would also need to know how much more is coming in. So we're going to look back to the 25-26 year and you can then just amend the figures in the sums for future years. So March 2025, long time ago now, it was £112.50 per patient. There was an increased amount up to 121.79. So if you do the 121.79 minus the 112.50, the old amount, that would equal £9.92. You times that by your weighted list size, which will give you the approximate annual amount extra you will receive to help you start working those figures out. You'll need to think about any uplifts you may have already given due to minimum wage if you've worked that out ahead. You'll need to also be aware that salaried GPs who are under the model BMA contract and have the wording DDRB in their contract, the suggested amount by DDRB must be given to them, even if you feel you can't afford it. It is contractual. Practice staff, you may need to look at rises of minimum wage and work with the partners, but do also think about retention of staff if you don't give rises, because recruitment is expensive. Now in 25-26, then a further rise came through, bringing the global sum up to 123.34, which was a further £1.55. Then if you'd already done that piece of work, that extra £1.55 could be times by the weighted list size to see the further increase that you may receive. Don't forget to think about on costs if you're working things out for staff. You can do these sums, of course, if you're an agenda for change practice. It's just that you will be giving that rise whether you want to or not, because you won't follow agenda for change. We've obviously just had the figures come in for the first part of 26-27 at the time of recording this. So the money at this point was going up to £128.69 per patient. So if we minus the 123.34, that was the final payment for March 26, that would be a £5.35 per weighted patient rise. So you can start working out ahead for next year. Obviously, minimum wage is going up by about 4%. And in the letter that came out in March 26, it suggested a 2.5% rise for your staff would be what they would expect to see. But obviously, the DDRB haven't announced at the time of recording. Have a think about reimbursement. So as I mentioned before, you should be checking back 3 years for water rates, rent and CQC. The only figures they've given is 2019, 2020, less than 50% of practices claim back their CQC fees, even though they've paid them. So there's a lot of people not claiming stuff. So it is worth having a look, going back 3 years. There is a spreadsheet that's coming out with all of this, where you have a look at your water. You could go back through all your old GMS statements. If you don't know where they are, you can get them on PCSE in archive statements. You can go back through all of them and literally write out all of your water bills, check that they've shown up on the statement and that you've been paid. And if you haven't been paid, go back and claim. Again, it's a piece of work I've done in most practices I've gone in where I've locumed to help and found thousands and thousands of pounds. So definitely worth doing. Another thing to do with finances is saving money, because your overall profit is not just what you bring in, but what you don't spend. So lots of ways of looking at saving money. Notional rent. Now, that is one that only comes up once every 3 years. You have a 3-year opportunity to check your notional rent when you sign your CMR1 forms. So these are forms that will come out to you. Unless you are actually a surveyor, you cannot do this yourself. I've heard partners say, well, why can't you do this to save us even more money? Actually, you can't unless you're a surveyor. But it used to be that you had all 3 years until you got your next CMR1 to challenge. You don't have that anymore. You have 12 weeks. So when the money, when the form comes through, not the money, when the form comes through, you have 12 weeks to either sign the form and accept the amount of money that they have offered you as a notional rent increase, not normally very much. Or you can work through companies such as the ones on the screen. I personally like Will Ellis from BW Health Surveyors, found them really good. You can just send your form to them, you sign something off, and then they deal with the backing and forthing with the NHS to try and get you some more money for your notional rent. They will normally take, it's all done on percentage. So if they don't manage to get you an increase, you pay nothing. If you get a big increase, you pay basically a third in fees. So you would pay the first year's worth of increase only, and then the second 2 years, that money would be extra money coming into you. It's definitely a way of making quite a bit more money, especially if it hasn't been looked at for some time. Also have a think about your fees for your private work. Are you charging enough? When did you last update? Really easy things to update. Travel vacs. You can look at local travel vac clinics. This is going out to Manchester. There will be Manchester-based clinics that are travel vac clinics. You can be charging the same for your private stuff. Obviously not your NHS provided ones, but everything else. Charge the same as a travel vac clinic, make that money coming in. Look at your reports. You can, if you've got partners who are part of the RCGP, they might be able to get you, or the BMA. I think there's a BMA standards form, but you've got to be a member to pull that down. Or just look at other practices around you. Think about a time-based study for costs involved at bringing in maybe a supplier that does some of this work for you, like IGPR or anyone similar to them, where they actually do the work for you. That's something to certainly consider if you do a lot of private work, and have that signed off. Have a think about it, decide what to do, but definitely put your prices up. Do make sure with your CQRS claims you are checking against EMIS or Arden searches or System 1. And if they are wrong, you really should be complaining. So you need to be looking at that underlying data in CQRS. Don't just tick and assume they're correct. I often find that during flu time, they are wrong. And the reason they're often coming out wrong is because there are such big numbers going through. So it's a good time. They're rarely wrong and in your favour. So definitely complain. It is also worth every 6 years, going through and having a PPA check for your general PPA stuff and also your flu stuff. The biggest problems are generally practices where they do a lot of minor surgery or you have a lot of trainees. But it often is the doctors rather than the nurses. It is not your person doing your PPA claim that are making errors. It is the lack of putting in a prescription. You may be able to do this piece of work yourself, but it is quite time consuming. And you would have to have all the correct searches, which would make things really difficult. If you hover over this, you will see that you can contact this company. It is run by an ex-practice manager. His name is Daniel. And you will be able to watch a video that explains how he does it, and he will go back and look at 6 years worth of claims. They take a percentage of what they find. But when they take that percentage, obviously, this was money you would never have found, and they go back 6 years for you. I think I've had this done at a few surgeries I've worked at, and they found anywhere between 15 and 24,000. So that was great to have that influx of money. You can also use their findings as a teaching for your staff to work better going forward. So if there is something they regularly missed, it is worth having a teaching session on that. So I would definitely recommend that company. Do think about any of your enhanced services coming through and making sure you action plan them to make all available money. Add in extra vaccine appointments, to add in extras for your MMR, your shingles, all those good things that are coming in. Think about adding digital plans, e.g. weight management, to maybe, well, this was done to earn extra money, but we hear they are pulling the weight management service and popping that into QOF, but still worth considering doing those searches and looking around to improve your QOF going forward. So when you action plan, you can make sure you have a look at your finances and understand what's coming in, including your PCN money that's coming through, to make sure that you are being paid correctly. And because we're all small businesses, you should have a business plan. This is a way of keeping track of your business finances and showcasing the areas you're improving on year. It's also very useful in your own appraisal, or if you're even looking to get yourself an increase going forward, that you can showcase all the great work that you have done. If you have not got a business plan, we have done a full training session on writing a business plan. It's about an hour long, and it comes with templates for a business plan for you to follow to make things a lot easier for you. There is also a full training that is recorded and available on finance, that is a bigger section of this, and also explains how to work through your accounts meetings and understanding what's going on in those. So again, that's some extra learning for you that I would suggest you go through your business plan training, and also your extra finance session to make sure that you are on top of all of those areas if you deal with that side of things in the business. That is the end of this short finance session on here. Again, definitely take a break, put me on pause, stop, and either come back later today or on a different day to work through your next section. Your next section will be health and safety. Hello and welcome to section 4, health and safety, in your new practice management training. It is really important that you have a good quality business continuity planning as part of your health and safety. Your business continuity plan should be updated regularly. It should include a relocation plan, such as where you would go if things go horribly wrong. If you have a dispensary or a pharmacy in the building, there are separate rules to follow. You have to look and check with your agreements that you have in place. Have they been discussed recently? Have things changed? If it's a local village hall, is it still there, operational? Is there a new manager? We need to make sure that We're updating our plans regularly. There is a long section on business continuity planning. Manchester GP Excellence made a full safety plan. We did this in the year 25-26. The business continuity included upgrades on Martin's Law and various new rules that were coming in to make sure that you are completely covered. We also looked at dynamic lockdown, and we have made a training session on dynamic lockdown and how to set up regular dynamic lockdown planning within your surgery. We've done various pieces on this, and also a piece on resilience for staff members to help them through when things go wrong for safety reasons. So all of those are available on the videos that are available on GP Excellence's website, and you have got you've got full chance to get onto those and have a look and do some deeper training. Part of your health and safety is to look at estates and make sure that all of your estates work has been completed. You may have a management company that take charge of this area, but if not, you need to complete the following, and that's risk assessments, health and safety plans such as fire, Legionella, waste and infection control. For your building checks, you need to make sure you've got your display energy certificate up, you have up-to-date PAP testing, a calibration, fire extinguisher, emergency light testing in both your main surgeries and any branches. Fixed wire testing needs completing. Your Legionella needs to be done. That can be done by an outside company, or you may do one of the ones where you fill little water pots and then have them sent away and checked. And things like Lola if you have a lift in the building. We have a spreadsheet that is available that will come out with all of your planning, and that will just show you all the different things to do. And obviously you can add to that or change it. You may also have this on TeamNet or Practice Index or whatever you're using for your health and safety planning. Do make sure you've got all your insurances in place and renew them annually. So yes, check prices, but don't lose things like your legal insurance to save money. You don't know when that may come as an important piece for you to have. Check your gas and electricity contracts whenever they're up for renewal, and check all your estate's policies and your infection control policies to make sure that they are correct and up to date with new rules. Do ensure that you have the latest up-to-date health and safety poster, and make sure that the name that is written as the responsible person is still working at the practice. CQC have found some that aren't, and that is a failure in that area. You can buy them just from Amazon. You need one per site, but do remember to keep that name updated. Do have a check who your CQC registered manager is and make sure that that is properly on CQC. Quite often a partner will retire and they have been the registered CQC manager and the site has not been updated. You can get yourself in a lot of trouble for that. Make sure you do a good quality health and safety briefing for any new starters, including fire risk and evacuation rules. And you can share a health and safety booklet either with them across an email or link it to, say, TeamNet or Practice Index, whatever you use, to make sure they've got that link available for that. We have provided within all the booklets that come out with this some paperwork, a health and safety booklet that may be of use to you. It's quite generic, just what to do in various scenarios, so that it's easy for you to not have to make too many changes, but you are showing that you are going the extra mile on health and safety. And when we think about infection control, annual audits should be taken. Your cleaning company may do your cleaning audits, but you need to check and make sure that's happening regularly. You should always have PPE available for staff. That does include face masks, just in case not just for pandemic, but in case they are dealing with somebody who is infectious. You should be doing regular hand washing technique audits. You can do those. You can have those funny little lights that you put over your hand to make sure and see whether you clean them properly, normally done by your infection control nurse. Your curtain changes, your curtains should be dated, and however often you change them needs to just work alongside your policy to make sure it is correct. Appropriate posters should be put up with reminders to wash hands, but obviously make sure they are laminated. And you should have correct waste bin training. So that is part of your, your sharps bins, etc. training to make sure that your team are using the correct bins, but also using the correct waste bins now because of all the rule changes with food waste, etc. So make sure you are covered completely for health and safety. You should be doing your fire training. You can do actual proper fire training as opposed to just doing some training online. By local companies will often send in people, you will have to pay for it obviously, where you can do fire extinguisher training. They will go through everything with you and they'll do some special fire warden training and do annual equipment checks for you. You do need to make sure that your COSH is done correctly and that each item you have a safety data sheet for also has a COSH risk assessment. So your safety data sheets is probably the only thing I would recommend you print out, not just online. You should probably have a paper copy as a grab and go in either your cleaning cupboard or next to your hazardous goods. If you don't know what a safety data sheet is, there is an example provided and a template for the COSH risk assessment that should go alongside it. This is one place where, if we go back to the finance section that we talked about, this is one place where it's not good to cheap out, because if you're going to local places buying the cheapest stuff, you will probably not be able to get the safety data sheets easily. And if you're saving 20 pence but spending an hour looking for a safety data sheet, it is not money well spent. Whereas if you use a big company like Dean Healthcare, Hillcroft, anyone like that, you can ask them for the safety data sheets of anything you've ever ordered, and they should have to send those through to you. And then you'll have all of them available to then do your COSH risk assessment against them. Risk assessments that you should have, this is something that always comes up for people. As a minimum, pregnant or disabled staff in the workplace should have their own risk assessment completed. Car park safety risk assessment, COSH for everything you have a safety data sheet for. Wheelchair use, that can be wheelchairs coming into the practice or your own wheelchair if you have one available for people to use. Fire escape risk assessment, infection control, RIDDOR, workplace driving, so that's not coming in and out of work but going off on visits, etc. Lone working, risk assessment for every piece of equipment you have, home visit risk assessment, violent patients, stress at work, clinical waste, bloodborne viruses. Also, we suggest you check all dates on your emergency meds in GP bags and in drawers to get you ready for in case you have any kind of CQC visit. Have a prescription tracker and have some safety controls on your prescriptions that are adhered to at all times. And clinicians should have a robust system for meds management. And we have a think about our policies. Make sure you read your policies when you update them. It is amazing that even now there have been CQC visits. So this is 2026 when I'm recording this, where PCTs are mentioned. Now they closed in 2008. So that is a long, long time, nearly 20 years of people signing off a policy every year and not checking. There should not be mentions of CCGs, PCTs, staff who have left, anything that is no longer relevant. Policies should be ready available. All your staff should know where to find them. Staff members should know how to know if a policy has been changed or updated. Do they get alerted by your policy provider? You need to follow policies and change them if you change things. So for instance, it's an urban myth that we have to have our curtains on set times because we are not a hospital. Our curtain changes, but you must follow your policy. So if it says 6 months in the policy, then it needs to be 6 months. You just need to be following your policy. IG policy should mention data protection toolkit and what to do around breaches, and you need to ensure that your privacy notices are updated on your websites and staff are aware of that. So please make sure all of those things are happening with your policies. Significant events, make sure you have a log. CQC will ask. Dispensary should also, if you have one, have a near miss log. Any dispensary that tells you they don't have near misses will actually be deemed as not telling the truth if CQC come in. They want to see issues, but they want to see that you're doing something about them. There were new contractual requirements around safety reporting that started in April 25. If you miss that contract training, there is an action plan which will be provided with this to make sure you have got your PPG members having those safety pieces discussed and put on their agenda, and making sure you have your patients who are trained up to look at your significant events. So there is an awful lot to do with that. I know many people are still not there a year later, so there is an action plan. And also data breaches. Ensure your team understand the significance of a data breach, what happens with that, and use a toolkit to understand what actually needs reporting to the ICO. It's really vitally important that you do that. That is the end of your health and safety area, and we are now going to come into the safeguarding point of this training. Do take a break, pop me on pause, or come back on a separate day to do this training. Hello and welcome to Section 5, Safeguarding. I'm going to talk a little bit about your safeguarding requirements, particularly those within CQC. CQC will check as part of safeguarding and the safe area of CQC that there is a safe recruitment procedure in place. That will include the effective use of the DBS as detailed within your DBS policy. It will include clear lines of accountability exist within the organisation for safeguarding, and it means that all staff must be aware of how to do safe whistleblowing. It's really important that staff know when something is very wrong, how to whistleblow. Staff must also work in an open and transparent way, so no fibbing or blaming. It is important that you stand up and accept if you have done wrong and apologise. That's a part of your duty of candour. As part of your safeguarding with CQC, they check that all patients are being treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their culture, disability, gender, age, language, racial origin, religion, or sexuality. And that staff do adhere to any guidance in your staff handbooks or your safeguarding policies, and they know how to interact with the relevant agencies, share information appropriately, and work properly through safeguarding. All staff who work with children, young people, and adults are at risk. Adults who are at risk are responsible for their own actions and behaviour, and they should avoid conduct that may lead to another responsible person questioning their motive or intention. So basically, behave. Another important thing that seems to be coming up quite a lot, even in local contracts, is areas around prevent, which is radicalisation and noticing radicalisation of your patients. There are some case studies that you can look at to get further training. But it is really important that your staff at least understand the national prevent line that they can call. The number is up there on the screen to ensure they know how to do that. The main thing that gets asked with safeguarding is what levels of training our staff need. So level 1, any reception, admin and secretarial staff need to do level 1. That includes any volunteer staff. So if you've got partners that bring their kids in to come and do a bit of work during the holidays, they need to do that training on day 1. Level 2 is your practice managers, your deputy managers, leaders of teams, care coordinators, reception managers, safeguarding admin, leaders of secretarial teams, etc., healthcare assistants and pharmacy technicians. And then level 3 is pretty much everyone clinical. GPs, nurses, physician associates, pharmacists, paramedics, AMPs, ACPs, mental health workers, nurse associates, anyone in any of those kind of roles, any of your R's roles. If you have a very specific PCN safeguarding role where somebody is overseeing across multiple practices, they should be doing a level 3. And your GP trainees, although that should be done by lead employer. You should also have a safeguarding lead who will do, there isn't a traditional level 4, but they will do extra training around, and that needs to be noted in their appraisals. So it's quite simple for them to work through maybe some extra prevent training or some training on things like FGM and put that in through as part of their extra training that they are watching out for and popping that through. You need to make sure that your record keeping is up to date and correct, and that CQC will be auditing safeguarding conferences are being coded into the records. The record follows the child, so it's important that it's correctly coded, and that sensitive third-party information is hidden, so it can't be read on the NHS app. If you have child case conferences, you should be redacting the other names of patients before it is added in, because obviously that is going to follow them into adulthood. And we also need to be sure that we are holding regular safeguarding meetings, that we are minuting really well, so that we've got that to look back on and maybe show CQC or show anyone that, as required, that we have done our bit with safeguarding. There are lots of paperwork that's going to come out with this to help you get through it. We also do a video on preparation for CQC that includes a lot of the health and safety that you've just done previous to this one and the safeguarding, and it goes into greater detail on that. So that's a recording that's available on the GP Excellence website, just as well as all of the others are that we've mentioned as we've gone through. That is the end of this section. Pop me on pause, take a break, do whatever you need to do, and we will come back for our final section, section 6, which is resilience. Hello and welcome back to section 6, your final section of your new to practice management, which is on resilience. And we're going to work through ways of making you resilient, both yourselves and your team resilient, helping yourself to feel better, cleaning your space, eating healthily, playing great music, maybe not at work, drinking water, and really sleeping better. Because if you feel more resilient and that you can cope better, you will do better in the workplace. This is a very shortened version of the resilience. There is a longer version of both resilience for managers. This is for you to work through as a separate video. That's about an hour and a half long, I think, and it will take you through some extra steps of resilience and some extra exercises you can do. There is also a resilience for staff that is available on the GP Excellence website. We suggest this is really good for PLTs, that you can perhaps pop this on a big screen with all of your staff and get them to watch those things. And there are lots of handouts that come with that as well. But any of that resilience work for staff will also be a bit of resilience for you, because it will save you working out something extra to do at a PLT event. So all good things to think about. One really important thing with resilience is sleeping well. And when I talk about sleep, I also think about taking home work and in the evenings when you should be resting, perhaps enjoying some family time. If our mind is full of work all the time, we will not relax. It is amazing to me, but apparently there have been tests done, and if you're a male practice manager out there, you are probably doing better than the female practice managers, because apparently the male brain closes down when you go to sleep by about 90%, which means you are getting that proper deep rest. Women's brains generally only close down by 10 or 20%, leaving much of the mind working all night. That may sound like we think we're better and we're getting through all these things. Actually, it means our minds are not resting properly. And if you are not resting fully, you are not as good the next day. And that will go on and on and on. So anything that can make us rest better at night is good for us. We should really practice sleep hygiene. That means no electronics at nighttime, not just before bed. That blue light can really keep you awake at night. Lavender sprays, really good. Not too much caffeine late at night. A couple of other things to think about is if your mind is worrying about work in the evening, perhaps when you're sat watching TV, chatting to the family, and you can't keep that little thing going on in your head that you need to do things. I personally used to email myself. I used to find that the easiest thing, coming to work the next day with a whole bunch of emails. But for me, as a reminder, because it would clear it out of my head. Other people, pen and paper. Some people keep pen and paper by the bed to write something down so it clears from their mind, because otherwise it will keep playing over and over. So anything you can do to help you sleep better should be good for you. Decluttering, great way to do things. Tidy desk, tidy mind. Hopefully none of your desks are quite as bad as that one. If you can make things digital, it can really help. So we talked in the HR session about digitalizing staff files, because when you've made things digital, you can also get rid of all of those cupboards that all of those unnecessary files were in, which clears the opening around you and clears the mind. Add some diffusers, really good to have those nice smells coming up, especially lime-based or something that will keep you alert and awake when you're in the workplace. Obviously, lavender ones are fine at home at night, but we don't want you asleep at your desk. Plants can make people feel a lot better. Artificial is fine, but mainly clear that place, so to clear your mind. Water versus caffeine. Obviously, if you can drink more water, that's better for you. But as far as caffeine, think about having decaffeinated tea and coffee available for your teams. And if you really want a treat for them, and actually don't tell them that instant hot chocolate, way, way cheaper than the natural coffee. Not the stuff you use with the milk, but the instant stuff. But it can make them feel really treated. Think about that 4 o'clock in the afternoon when your receptionists are all hyped up on caffeine. Everything seems a bit worse for them. The patient's a bit grumpy. It's all hell breaks loose. Whereas actually they can be a bit calmer if they're on decaf. You can't force them to drink decaf, but it is worth a try. Have a think about having some of those things available, and definitely try and drink more water. Take your leave. I know it sounds mad. There are a lot of people out there that don't take all of their annual leave because they feel the place will fall apart without them. Again, I will take you back to when we talked at the beginning about planning your workload and delegation. It's really important that you take your time away from work and you rest and you don't think about work. It's really important as well to think about taking lunch breaks. I know most practice managers do not take their lunch breaks. If you can get away for 20 minutes away from a screen, It can clear your mind. And therefore, when you come back, you will work better. If you can get out and have a quick walk and get some fresh air as well, even better for you. But I'm fully aware, having worked in some of the more deprived areas, sometimes the smell of cannabis was worse than the fresh air smell. And I definitely didn't come back feeling better from those walks. So you know where you work, take that time away. You can get your team to stop being on their phones the moment they come away from their computers, even better. But you cannot stop your staff doing that, but maybe get them to watch the resilience training for staff and about how they can clear their own minds and feel better. Should be really good and good to help them. One thing that we do suggest is that you try not to worry about the everything else. There are things that are in your control, things that are in your influence, and then there's everything else. So, for instance, the new contract letter has just come out while I'm recording this. This is being recorded in March 26, and a letter had just come out from Amanda Doyle telling us all the changes to the new contract for the 26-27 year. Gosh, that seems time's moving forward. But all the changes that we're expected to do. So what's in your control is to work through that contract, to plan it out, to make sure that you are covering all the requirements on access, that you have full awareness of all the bits and pots of money, and you can make sure that you are utilising those as much as possible for your particular surgery. What's in your influence is the way that you work that, the way you explain to your staff and you tell your staff what's available and you work through those areas. But then there's the everything else. Unless you work for NHS England, or unless you are Amanda Doyle, and I don't think she'll be watching this, you can't change the everything else. You can't make those parts of the contract go away. So try not to have your head spinning about the everything else and concentrate on the bits that you can control. It will make a real difference. I find a lot of people spend a lot of time in the everything else, and therefore they're spending their time worrying and panicking about things they'll never change. I'm going to do a little exercise. It's called the Wheel of Work, and the paperwork on this is available and will come out to you as part of this. So you can work this as many times as you need, and this will help you decide on your priorities going forward within your Wheel of Work. So step one, you're going to consider, and you'll see the paperwork come up in front of you in a moment. You're going to consider each category in turn and decide how much satisfaction you have in each area of your work life. 0 is no satisfaction, 10 is maximum, or somewhere in between. You're going to place a line or a mark on the line that records your score. And then when we have done all the scores, we are going to do a circle around for your wheel. So this is your wheel. We're going to do it together. So we'll start with finance, earnings and reward. We've got to be sensible here. We work for the NHS. None of you are Elon Musk. But are your earnings fair for the work you do? Some of that's going to depend on the size of the management team, which will depend on how much work you have to do. If you feel you're in an agenda for change practice, you're paid really well, your work isn't too onerous, you are paid fairly for what you do, you could be all the way up at 10. If you're in one of these practices where you're earning barely more than the reception staff, even though you're taking all the responsibility, you could be down there at 1 or somewhere, hopefully in between. Then we go down to purpose and passion. How passionate do you feel about your job? How important is it to you? And give yourself a mark between 1 and 10. Then we come down to your work-life balance. Where are you with that? Now, some things can't change. You can't do anything about having young children or maybe caring responsibility. But this is the work-life balance, as in, are you taking work home with you just to get through it all? Or is there so much work that you're not getting through it? And can you make changes on that? Then we think about our working relationship with our peers. So that's our team. How well is that on the whole? And then our working relationship with the boss. So if you're an assistant manager, this might be your practice manager, or if you're a practice manager, this may be your partners. In this one, I do give you permission to have more than one marking. So for instance, I've worked in places where my relationship with my partners is up here at a 9 generally, but maybe with one partner, it's a lot lower. And that's something you can mark out. You know who that person is. You don't have to write their name on this. Then we go to time management. How do we feel we are managing our time? Again, are those tasks getting done or are they not getting done? Are we productively procrastinating, as we talked about in session 1? Then we move across to our professional development. Our professional development really depends on us. What's important to you? So for instance, where I've worked, I've been allowed to do whatever courses I've wanted to do, but I've never wanted to do a big degree course of recent years. I feel I'm heading towards retirement, so therefore I get everything I need to do. So I class myself up there at a 9 or 10 because I'm getting what I want out of it. But if I'd wanted to do a big degree course and the partners had said no, there wasn't time or there wasn't the money, then I may have marked myself lower. So that's how you work out your professional development. And finally, your work content and process. Are you happy with all the bits you do? Do you do the HR but not the finance and you'd prefer to do the finance? Or are you really quite content with everything? And give yourself a mark between 1 and 10. Sorry. Then on that wheel, draw a little circle around your marks and you should easily see the bits that are inner and lower than everywhere else. And those are the bits that we need to work on. So we reflect and review our wheel. How happy are you with the overall balance of your wheel? What areas do you need to change? How can you change them? And what might stop you from shifting the balance of the wheel? Start to make an action plan, and you can do that using the GROW model. And we'll go through that in the next slide. Consider where the main differences are, where you currently are and where you would like to be, because these are the areas to focus on, and be specific about what would be different. You've got to think of this overall. So for instance, if you don't have too much responsibility, but you don't feel your pay is very high. Maybe if you're going to look at another practice where you're going to be paid more, you may have more responsibility, and you've got to decide, is that a balance you want? Do you want to be working harder for that extra money? Is it worth that extra area of your life? For each category you want to change, explore how you would achieve those things. Could you achieve them in your current role? Do you have to change roles? Write down 3 things you'd like to start doing, stop doing, or do more of that would affect that area of your life. Decide which 2 or 3 things would make the biggest difference, and they're the ones to work on. And then share your exercise with someone you value and trust and gain their support for your development. I would suggest here that it's someone who you value their opinion, not necessarily someone who loves you. So my husband would always think I could do anything. So although he would honestly tell me how he felt, he would perhaps not be as practical as my assistant manager, who I get on very well with, and who would look at me and say, you're not going to really enjoy doing that, or that wouldn't quite work. She would be very honest. And that's the kind of honesty you need with this to make sure you're not trying for things that really won't work for you. I'm sure most of you have seen the GROW model. So you work through your goals. You look at your goal, you look at the reality of the current situation, the options of what you can do, and then think, what will you do, or what do you have the will to do? And you keep working through those goals until you've worked through exactly what you need. There are goal setting paperwork that will come out to you with this section. And as part of your goal setting, you need to think about the desire that you have. You also have to have the belief you can do those things and the ability to do those things. And as we can see, it gets smaller and smaller to have all 3. So I'm going to give you a bit of an outrageous example because it's the easiest way to see these things. So imagine my desire was to be an astronaut. It's not, but let's say it is. Do I have the desire? I can think, yes, I've absolutely got the desire to be an astronaut. Do I have the belief in myself that I can do this? Well, if any of you have actually met me, you'll know I believe I can do anything. I'm a little bit overconfident. So I would definitely have that belief. So that takes me down to that smaller area on the screen. I have the desire. I have the belief. But do I have the ability? I'm 57. Probably a bit old now to become an astronaut. I was never great at science. You really do need to be. I do a lot of walking, but I'm probably not fit enough to pass the physical, especially not at my age. In reality, I don't really have the ability to be an astronaut. So I have the desire, I have the belief, but I don't have the ability. I probably need to move on to a different goal. So therefore, that's how you look at recycling your goals. Perhaps not by being an astronaut. But what we do need to think about if we're not feeling resilient is sometimes it really isn't you. They say we're all in the same boat. We're not. We are in the same storm. It's the storm of general practice and practice management. Some of you will be in a yacht. That yacht is bobbing along on its agenda for change practice with all the rights for maternity and sick leave, great staff that are hardly ever off, fantastic supportive partners. You're in a yacht, you're in that storm, but you're bobbing along okay. Most of you will be in a canoe. You're paid okay. The partner's all right most of the time. The staff are all right. Bit too much sickness, but you can cope with it. New stuff coming in the contract can be challenging, but you'll get through it because you've got a team. Some of you will actually be drowning. You're not paid properly, no great sick pay. Some of you actually won't even get your pay on time. The contract is so difficult because nobody gels together and nobody stays. You're all in a different boat in that same storm. So do remember, whatever you're going through, different people are in different situations, and it's not just resilience that can make the decision whether you're in the right place for you or even the right job. But if it's the right job for you and the wrong place, only you can make those changes. But do remember, when your teams are telling you that things are wrong, strong people break too. They tend to do it in silence. They rebuild, they move forward, or sometimes move on. And what you don't want to do is only listen to those members of your team that shout the loudest when things are wrong. But also think about that shouting in your own head for your own resilience. Are you doing things right for you? Can you rebuild and move forward? Or do you need help? And if you do need help, there is help out there. I have done a thing of all the help that can go out with after this, and you can put that out and send it to all of your team. Not those individuals, make sure it goes to everyone, because of that. Strong people break in silence. You won't always know what people are going through. Or pop it up on your health and wellbeing board if you have one. So the help that's out there, NHS England has introduced a 24/7 tech support. Service can be accessed by texting the word shout to 85258 and is available to all NHS colleagues who may have had a tough day, are feeling worried, overwhelmed, or have a lot on their mind and need to talk through it. Additional mental health resources, including wellbeing apps, can be found on the NHS England website. If you need financial wellbeing support, there's a rise in cost of living that's an added worry for everybody. So the Money Helper service offers free and impartial advice via telephone, WhatsApp and text about budgeting, managing debt, or or gaining clarity on your financial options, this service can provide the guidance you need to navigate through. The phone number is on the screen there for that, and the WhatsApp number there to get that help through to you. Bright Sky is a free to download confidential mobile app providing support and information for anyone who's in an abusive relationship. And then the Work Life Central program has a collection of expertise, information and inspiration through video, live event and written format covering the areas of careers, families, inclusion, well-being and the workplace. If things are really bad, #StayAlive app is a suicide prevention resource for the UK, full of information and tools to help you stay safe in a crisis. And Unmind is a mental health platform that empowers staff to proactively improve their mental health and well-being. And finally, Headspace is a science-backed app in mindfulness and meditation, providing unique tools and resources to help reduce stress, build resilience, and aid better sleep. Thank you so much for doing this Practice Managers program that may help new practice managers or people aspiring to be practice managers. I hope you've done all 6 sessions, and I hope you've noted all the separate information we've had on different recordings so you can get a deeper knowledge of all of the different things available on the GP Excellence website. Thank you so much for your time. We hope we've helped you, and I hope you've decided to stay in practice management to work through this together. Thank you and goodbye.